Hey up everybody, my name is Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence, a film that was made by humans for humans. But is that necessarily what art is all about? Is art necessarily a human expression, inherently human, or is it something that all species, no matter the sentience, are capable of producing? So throughout history, since cavemen, the dawn of man, we have engaged in art, from little paintings on the wall to statues in ancient Greece and Rome and that kind of thing, to Renaissance paintings, to modern film and television. I've left so much out of that because the history of art is just so complex and so detailed, and there's so much going on that I couldn't possibly do it justice, even with a 10-hour video and 4, 5, 6 years of education that I don't have on the subject. So that's why I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is something that I've been thinking about for the past about 7 or 8 years actually, is art necessarily something that humans are intrinsically, it's an intrinsically human thing to create art? And can art also be cross-species, as in, can one species make art for the purposes of another? I think to answer that question very simply, yes, because if you go on YouTube and you look up like music for dogs or like music to calm your dog down, stuff like that, well, straight away it's there. It's music made by one species for another. Hell, even a dog whistle is technically like a weird form of art. It's a very uncomfortable piece of art. It's like harsh noise, like the snail dilemma or something like that, or like Merzbow for dogs, essentially. Yeah, I'm not saying that dog whistles are a form of art. I am saying though that one species can make art for another, and it's not necessarily that humans have to make art for other humans. Now, the topic of is AI generated creations, are they art, has been sort of going around for the past couple of years, and it's quite a I can't remember the word. It's an issue for people, and people either agree that art is human, or they disagree and they think art is not necessarily human and that AI can make art. I'm on the side that AI can make art. However, that isn't to say that I like AI and I like the progression of AI and the future of humanity that will come from it. I think that there is only death and destruction ahead because of AI. However, that's not to say that it can't make art, because humans are also capable of death and destruction and genocide and horrors beyond our wildest dreams, but they can also create beautiful works of art. Look at Roman Polanski, certified paedophile. However, he's also made Rosemary's Baby. He also made The Pianist after he was caught out. So evil things and evil people can make great works of art. So that's a topic for another day, separating the art from the artist. But in terms of, can AI make art? Yes, I do think it can. And do I think other species are capable of making art? Look at, for instance, the monkey that stole that guy's camera and he took a selfie with it. And then what happened was the photographer tried to gain the rights to that image, but the court said, well, you didn't take the picture, the monkey took the picture, it's the monkey's picture. And because monkeys are incapable of holding copyright, that means that the image is automatically in the public domain. So there's the image. I can use it, and they can't get a copyright strike or anything. So yeah, art, I think, the example I like to use is, say aliens came to Earth, right? Say the spaceship landed right over there, and the aliens came out, and they're little blue men with weird little helmets on, and they talk in a babbly language, and then the first thing they do is they show up a screen, and they show you their latest work. It's not a film, it's not a book, it's not TV, it's not theatre, it's something entirely outside of our imagination, right? And we sit down and we watch it, we are entertained, we are moved by it in some emotional way. Who are we to say to those aliens that what they made and showed for us is not art? What is it? Is it a presentation? Is it entertainment? Well, isn't entertainment inherently art as well? Isn't even newspapers and journalism a form of art? Aren't all these things a form of art? As long as it's being replicated for the sake of some kind of emotional response, even if that emotional response is, You know, I mean, you got reality TV, for instance. That's not designed to make you like really tear up or really move you in any kind of way. It's kind of just have white noise on while you're maybe doing your cooking or you're doing something else or you're cleaning or whatever, you know. It's just white noise to have on. But it's also a form of expression that you can give more attention or less attention and get different levels of response out of it depending on what you feed into it. Exactly the same way as the most art house intellectual film, paintings, etc., where you've got to really analyze it to get the emotional resonance, because the emotional response comes from how connected you feel to it on a personal level, rather than it being entertainment that is fed into your ears and your eyes and that kind of thing. I mean, for instance, I don't know the answer to this one, right? This is just a question I'm asking for the comments. Please put your response in the comments below. Do you think that food is a form of art? I don't know. I'm leaning towards yes. You know, like a proper culinary meal. But even McDonald's, you know, not necessarily good. It's the same way that the Transformers movies aren't good, but it's still there. It's still something that can be consumed for an emotional response. You know, you have a McDonald's and you're like, oh, especially if you've been out on a lash and you find a McDonald's on your way home and you're like, you know, you're munching your way through that Big Mac or whatever, and you're like, yeah. And like that. I don't actually like the Big Macs whatsoever. They taste fucking awful. But that's still an emotional response. It's still an emotional response. So who's to say that these things aren't art? Is the dam that a beaver makes, is that not architecture? And is architecture not a form of art? Would you say that the Sistine Chapel is not a work of art, and the architecture and the beauty that kind of comes from it? And just the same way that shithole looking bridge right there that's made out of wood and nothing else, would you say that's not a work of art? Because if the Sistine Chapel is a work of art, then what makes that not a work of art? They're both forms of architecture. Just because it's not as high quality doesn't make it not art. The same way that, you know, your average new build block of flats is not any less architecture than the Louvre or whatever, right? Or the Eiffel Tower, or the Burj Khalifa, or these magnificent structures that are designed to overwhelm the senses and make you go, Jesus, bloody hell, that's impressive. So, sorry about the noise, there's some people that are doing some work behind the camera. So in terms of what humans can and can't do and what other species can or can't do, obviously the beavers making a dam aren't going to be making as high quality works of art as humans can, because our abilities and our access to tools and resources are fundamentally different. They're on such different scales that we can't even process it properly. Because can you try and live like a beaver for a week? I fucking can't. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, and I don't have the claws for it. But anyway, getting back to whether art is inherently human, not necessarily just can AI make art, but can other species in general make art? Because is AI not some kind of weird species that we can't classify yet, that, you know, doesn't have DNA, it's made of code and computerized like bits of binary and stuff like that? I don't know necessarily how all of this is going to form into a new scientific consensus for the nature of life and existence in going forward into the future. But if AI is able to gain something that we could consider human-ish sentience, then we're going to have to compete with AI's art, whether you consider it art or not. You're going to have to compete with the film that an AI spat out, just the same way as you have to compete with your fellow filmmakers now. So what is the answer to all this? Can AI make art? I think yes. Can other species make art? I think yes. Can aliens make art? I think yes. What is art? I think my definition for art is, can it be something that is replicatable, that can create some kind of emotional trigger response, whether that be positive or negative, and is it something concrete? Now, those are definitions that people would challenge all the time. Like, for instance, the band Bill of Heaven, they like to work with extreme long-form bits of music. Like, they had this one, I can't remember the name of it. It was an album that is something like 800 times the length of the universe. Like, you know, I'm talking like this is an album that is hundreds of trillions of years long, right? But how is it not art? Just because it's not something that you can consume in its entirety you can only take a little nibble of it. Say if you had a cheese wheel the size of like New York City, you could only take a few bites out of it before you pass out from just sheer exhaustion. But is it not still like an incredible piece of cheese just because you could only take in a little bit of it and not all of it? I mean, you could take that Bull of Heaven album, speed it up by 8 gazillion times and listen to it in the course of half an hour. It would sound like crap, but you could do that. So who's to say that it's not consumable? And who's to say that that adoption and that change and that almost remixing of it isn't then in of itself art as well? Because all artistic expression is an evolution of what came before. The current landscape of the media is a reflection of what the landscape of the media was 20 years ago, which was the same as what it was 40 years ago, and so on and so on and so on. We're doing a call and response. So at the moment we're in this kind of postmodern sort of era, where everything is kind of semi-self-referential, but we're also kind of transitioning away from that into this more earnest and small-scale kind of thing. But the original postmodern movement was a reflection of, you know, films that were played very straight, your bog-standard action movie, but now people are bored of the bog-standard action movie, so they need to add some kind of twist to make it interesting. Something that changes it up, because people are now familiar with the format and the formulas, and they are bored of the same old, and they need something that at least feels kind of new. So art is such an extremely complex entity, and I don't think it can be confined to the expression of one species. I don't think that any type of species is incapable of making art. It's just not capable of making art that we can necessarily wrap our heads around. If I draw a circle, is that not art? Is it necessarily I drew the circle while I had suicidal thoughts and that backstory makes the circle more interesting? Or say if I drew the circle because I was on an acid trip and it was like the circle was like the circle of life to me that I was drawing down. It's still just a circle at the end of the day. So it's up to the audience and the artist what they want the thing to be. Like, you've got the death of the artist, right, where the artist's original intention isn't necessarily as important as the audience's impression. So say if I drew a circle whilst I was having this insane acid trip and I thought I was drawing the meaning of life, and I put so much emphasis into it, and then other people look at it and all they take away from it is, it's a circle, who gives a shit? It's still something that had that artistic impression and artistic instinct behind it to actually create something like that, even if it was something that in reality wasn't necessarily of good quality. So it's such a complex form, and there's no amount of lifetimes that all the people in the world could live that could explain it all in any kind of scientific way, because I feel like art is intrinsically outside of the scope of objectivity. There is nothing objective about any kind of art, because even if you make a film that everyone agrees is awful and like no one agrees that it's good, that's not to say that it is necessarily a bad film. Everyone 1,000 years ago believed in Catholicism. That doesn't make Catholicism true, does it? Just because everyone believed in it, just because everyone thinks this film's crap doesn't make the film crap. It makes it whatever it is. It means that people don't like it. It means that people consider it a bad film, but that doesn't make it a bad film. And I think people get lost in that when they talk about, oh, this film's bad, this film's good. And people assume that to mean that they are talking about it in an objective form, in an objective way, when really they're not. And they should always have those little parentheses of, I think, I consider, I believe. You know, when you see an interview with someone and they've got those little parentheses that kind of add the little filler words that they, you know, meant to say, but they kind of didn't. You know, if I say, oh yeah, me and Bill were working on this thing, they might add like Bill's last name in the brackets so that people can understand. Consider when people talk about art and they review stuff, imagine they just said, I think, before every single sentence, because it is so subjective. And I think that it is cross-species. I think that it's a form that goes beyond the self, and it goes beyond us as humanity, as a single human species. It is universal to every single species out there, and every species response to art will be different, and every species type of art will remain different. And I think as we go into the future and we inevitably find aliens in the massive universe that's out there, our eyes will open to the potential forms that we could experiment with that we have no idea about at this current day, because our own evolution and our own mindset and our own abilities as people now are incapable of even processing this form of art that is higher than what we could even possibly imagine. Because that's all art really is. It's imagination personified. I think that's going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Put your own thoughts about AI, humans, art, shit like that. Put it in the thing below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this. Have a great rest of the day. Take care. Love you all. And yeah. If you find any aliens that have made a film, do let me know and I'll add it to my folk films playlist. Yeah, that's going to be all from me. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Can't be.